John, if you had a choice, we know this is a complicated question in a sense because it has to do with the world of music as well. We before we were talking about Rosina Levine saying that, today we live in little boxes with hammerjacks. And here you are still playing this literature which once was possibly more conducive to another time. If you had a choice of which era in history you would like to live or visit even, well, what would that be off the cuff? Chopin's Paris of the 30s and 40s, perhaps?
No, I don't think so. That kind of thinking does not occur to me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I have never had any desire to go back into another era.
All right. You're very happy with your own time then, obviously.
I don't know whether I'm happy with it, but I think
it's the what is.
It's the what is.
So you're a practical man who lives in the moment, obviously.
I think you would have found bores, stupid people,
anytime.
Inconveniences, hygiene problems of the past. I don't think any of us would be happy with that. I think you would find, there's never been, we only see the rose haze over another period.
Mm-hmm.
I think every era has its good and bad points. I just don't think I'm hipped on any set of things so much that I would want to. I would love perhaps to go back to the medieval period. Maybe Cluny in the 13th century or something. I don't think I would want to go back to the time of Mozart or to Chopin. I think it was pretty horrible in terms of the public they had to work with.
I was just reading Roger Shattuck's The Banquet Years from 1885 to 1915 Paris, and he says it was almost like an ecstasy. It was one of the great moments in history. What about that era? All the music
that would be
was now
interesting.
changing.
That would have been very interesting. I think, yes, from about 1880 on would have been very interesting.
Till the First War.
But, as a friend of mine rather wisely said the other day to me, we're living in an age of great singing, and we are not aware of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
But when you figure that people in 100 years are going to say, my God, Joan Sutherland, one of the freak great voices of the world.
Uh-huh.
We've heard everybody from Callas to Baldi to Nielsen, that we've had an era of extraordinary singers.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody has put quotes around it yet.
Mm-hmm.
There will be people who will say this was the age of great bel canto again.
But not of
But
great...
it's interesting, the Opera House is packed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only place in New York that is absolutely jammed.
Well, something is happening then.
So I think that, again, we cannot always see what's happening.
Is the piano recital in jeopardy? Are there fewer of them than 20 years ago?
Of course there are.
Doesn't that disturb you?
Yes, but those things come and go. I think it'll come back up. The music is there.
The individual alone doesn't seem to be massive enough in a multimedia time. You have to have whole companies on stage, it seems to fascinate people.
And television has affected people to an extraordinary degree. They're not listening to one person on the boob tube. They're hearing, watching.
Mm-hmm.
Variety. People do not have a span of concentration that they used to.
Mm-hmm. When you work, do you work out your pedaling as well, even though halls may be a different acoustic? Each one.
I work out trick pedalings. But I pedal unconsciously. It was always been one of my greatest virtues. I never think about it. I am a natural pedaler.
So few are.
And I know I am, and I've been told it, and I've never even thought about it. But I will work out long pedals or lack of pedal, things like that. I work out carefully. But generally, no, I never think about pedaling.
Now, what about students who don't have that gift?
I have no success in trying to teach them. I just kind of shake my head and say it's no good. It's hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can teach pedaling.
You can't teach it anyway. Are you superstitious in any way before you play, during, or afterward?
Oh, everybody's a little bit superstitious.
Do you have any specific things that go on?
Oh, well, the concert day is pretty routine,
You don't have a revolver on the piano like George Antile once did.
No, but I have a certain thing. I always take a nap the day of a concert, and I always have 2 raw eggs and milk and honey and coffee about 2.5 hours before.
You couldn't go on without it?
Oh, I could.
Yeah.
Sure.
So you're not a compulsive man?
Not a compulsive, no, by no
No.
means.
Are you a compulsive practicer?
Yes.
You have to do that every day?
Yes.
Or you don't feel good, you feel unwashed, what?
No, I just feel guilty.
Guilty. Was this inculcated in you by your mother?
I'm sure.
Uh-huh. Has she
Isn't
been...
all guilt inculcated
right.
by mothers?
The father usually is not around enough to, make the impact.
No, as a kid, she used to make me take a date book and write 1 line down was a half an hour, and the thing that made the cross was an hour. And if there weren't so many of those, I was scolded at the end of the day.
That's wonderful. So you came from a musical environment.
Yeah.
Your mother was
And they
a
were
good pianist.
excellent. They were excellent, not amateurs. Very
Now,
good.
she was excellent, very good, and so forth. Parents today don't play the piano anymore for their children.
No.
What's going on? Television? Records?
Music isn't part of the home as it was.
Doesn't this have a great psychological warmth, though, music in the home?
Yes, I think so. I grew up. I mean, my parents were playing chamber music before and during and after I was born.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the first things I heard were things like the Fauré Quartet, the piano quartet, and the Dochnagny C minor quartet, the quintet,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And so my earliest memories are of that kind of music.
Was your mother proud of your successes?
I think so. They were extraordinary parents. They were not stage parents. They were good parents. They were wise enough about the business. They were extremely good. I really couldn't fault them.
You won the Leventrit, I believe, in '57, and then
No, the Leventrit was 55.
And then the next year or two,
Before that was the Steinway Centennial, which was the old National Federation of Music Clubs, but they altered it to fit the centennial year of Steinway.
and then you were involved in
The Queen Elizabeth in Brussels.
Queen Elizabeth, where you and Ashkenazi won
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Now, has competition changed since the 1950s? Is it more ruthless?
It depends on if the Russians show up.
Mm-hmm.
One year we had 5 Russians, I think that was 75, in Brussels. And they were extraordinary. The best one did not win because the best ones I felt fell down at the finals. If the Russians don't come, the general standard, I don't think is as good as it used to be. And they feel the same way.
The Russian technically is superb.
Yeah, they just are trained, those hands. You know, you can tell they're ready to give concerts at the age of 15. They're truly ready.
That's because of their
They've
system
been at
of-
the concert. They were taken at the age of 6 and put into the good conservatories and taught by the best people.
What do you expect of yourself as a juror in the Queen Elizabeth? You usually are one of the judges. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you have any standards that you yourself have set for yourself during the years of judging? It's such a delicate matter, judging.
It's a delicate matter. I try to avoid the trap of always voting for careful, safe playing.
Yes.
But we all, I suppose, think that. I've found that it's very difficult.
You have fun at the competitions.
Yes, but
You
they
do.
are. They're wonderful. The Brussels things particularly are wonderfully done.
Mm-hmm.
They're elegant, and you have lunch with the king and queen, and it's all very festive, and you're beautifully handled. And, yeah,
So
but it's hard work. And the hardest thing is to think when you hear an 18 or a 19-year-old, what is it going to do? We gave El Basha first prize in '78. He was a Lebanese who had been studying with Sancan in Paris. Well, the only thing we could judge anything by really was Mozart's Sonata, which we made him play, but everything else was Islamé, Prokofiev, second, that kind of thing. Formidable,
Mm-hmm.
but what's it going to be? Will that hold up? And there's nothing wrong with it, but is it going to turn into a major?
Yes, John. Many people at 20 can play the Liszt Sonata. Many at 40 can't memorize a piece.
I know. Something you cannot predict how the artist is going to develop. There's no way. And then we hear that what is the hardest is to hear the 28, 29, 30-year-olds who are just under the wire. And their playing is often a bit more mature than 18. But you have to keep wondering, well, is this as far as they're going to go? And I find those are the hardest ones to judge, is the late ones.
So this is a very subtle thing, this question. It's not so simple to be a judge because that 30-year-old limit, let's say, there should be in your mind perhaps enough maturity to think that maybe at 40 it will be an artist.
And let's face it, a lot of music is morality. Everybody's concept is like religion. Everybody's concept of what is right is different. I get nervous with rests being pedaled through. Some people, it doesn't bother on the jury. Some people are terribly concerned about wrong notes. But to me, it depends on whether they've missed them because they're not ready or just, listen.
Rests pedaled through in what, Mozart? Or
anything. But, when the pedal is just put down and you don't hear any rests. Some people are very upset with this and that. It's like comparing religions. If you're Catholic, an abortion is a crime. If you're, for many people, it's not. You see, it all depends on how you look at it.
What is good programming to you? You've always programmed very well. Is it?
I think programming with a profile, and I think the most important thing is to.
What's the profile?
Is neither to play down to the audience nor to play too far over them, because, to be perfectly honest, one of the great things I learned from being with Sam Barber a lot, going to concerts, was that his attitude was that, at a concert, his attitude was that of a layman. He would say, I can't take anything away from the hall with that piece of modern junk. Or, that's not good programming. My ear is turning off. And he would listen the same way as a layman.
That's an
Too many
interesting
people
thing.
think, we'll give them all Varese and Stockhausen, and the little dummies in the audience should like it. No, why? We've all got to hear something we are familiar with, something we know. None of us can take too much unfamiliar music too all. On the other hand, we do not like to sit there and feel, now we are being given this old warhorse because they don't trust us to like anything. Hard to judge your audience exactly. Neither high nor low.
What is your opinion of the average person, average concert listener's ability to truly listen? And what constitutes good listening in your mind?
Well, you can work that one any way you want. My most current way of looking at the whole thing is that we all listen basically the same way in one respect. Either our attention is held or it's not. If your attention is held, no matter how much you may disagree with it, okay. But if your mind wanders, something is terribly wrong. And on that level, the fine musician and the layman are exactly the same. Their mind may wander in a different way. But when your mind goes to other things, we all listen the same way.
Now, doesn't this chatter, this mind wandering, happen so constantly to the musician or to the layman that one wonders if one is really hearing a tenth of the music? How does one gear in? Not because of a certain performance, but of a general learning process. We are not taught how to listen to music. We may learn how to analyze chords or something.
Well, David, we're not taught to listen to one thing at a time. You see students studying with their ear their ears stopped up by those machines, or with a record player blaring. They're trying to do 2, 3, 4, 5 things at once, and we all tend to do that in the modern age. We're not trained to sit still and listen and concentrate on one thing.
No, we're not, and that may be the answer. We just are. We're
People are
undisciplined
almost
as
embarrassed
listeners.
to have to sit down to only one choice.
Yeah.
We want to be like in a restaurant, have a huge menu.
And with the television world of the fleeting
It only
image,
makes it worse.
we almost
Only makes it worse.
we almost just see. We don't hear anymore at all.
My point is, it would be lovely if all of us were trained to hear and concentrate on one thing. Then if the mind wanders, it is truly the performer's fault.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But don't you often get the feeling in a hall that your mind will wander and you'll try to replay it back and think, oh, I'm a bad boy, I didn't hear that carefully, and I wish he would go back so that I could find out whether I really liked it. And then I have to stop and think, no, my mind wandered. That's already bad.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when I will be thinking about something else, and I regret it.
Well, I find that many times, frankly, if I had some sort of music lover's meter on, I would come out of there a very poor music lover. I haven't heard much of what has happened.
Yeah.
My stomach was hurting, or I was thinking of a personal problem, or my own playing of the piece, let's say.
Exactly.
You're not hearing it. So here, if there's a trio of composer, performer, the listener has to be a creative part of it to really make the thing live. Santayana once said that listening in many ways is also the process of composing the music and playing it.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure. Because your ear is as selective as the composer's pen is.
Yes. Well, it is a shame. We are, of course, we learn most things through our seeing, and yet musicians now are notoriously unvisual. I've asked many musicians about a piece of painting, I said, did you see that on the wall? They could be living with it for 30 years and they haven't seen it. Are you part of that group?
No, I'm very conscious of the visual arts.
Mm-hmm. You get inspiration from other arts?
Mm-hmm. I don't go out of my way, but I've always been interested in them.
You don't go out of your way, what, to
I
be
mean,
involved?
I don't think to myself, now I am learning the Liszt Sonata, therefore I will go and see paintings of the period.
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah.
do it that way.
Yeah.
But I do not consciously. The visual arts are to me a pleasure. If I feel like going to a museum, I go and I really drink it up.
Yes. You're one of the major pianists today. Who would you like to hear of the past?
Mozart.
Okay, Mozart, and why would you like to hear Mozart? A fine pianist,
I think I would have
obviously.
liked him. I think of all the composers, he's the only one I would have enjoyed.
He would have been playing on that piano that you don't care for.
Be that as it may, it doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
I would have liked to have heard and known Mozart.
Known him, why?
I think I would have liked him. I don't think
Your
I would have
sense of
liked
humor may well have worked with his.
I don't like most of the composers that I've read about. They were rather strange.
All right.
Tight.
Let me ask you, since we now spoke of the playing of Mozart, what of his piano sonatas or concertos, which are the ones that speak to you most, of the concertos? And for a student, which is the most difficult to bring off for the audience? Is it the big C major, number 25?
That almost never comes off, the 503.
Mm-hmm. Why?
It's too much like Beethoven. It's a hard bridge thing.
Uh-huh. Would you have liked to have heard Beethoven play, especially?
No, I don't think. I mean, I would have liked to have heard all of them play.
I know.
I don't think so. Not especially.
What?
That seems to me to be a clear style. I see no problem in Beethoven. You either play it well or you don't. I don't think it's particularly difficult style to figure out. I don't think there's any great
Pianistically or musically?
in
all
all
of it?
ways. I think it's you either understand it or you don't. I don't think there's great mystery about it.
Yes.
It's fairly open music of a certain kind of simplicity of depth, if that makes any statement.
Very fine.
The depth is so deep, but it's also so simple that I don't think it's necessary to know anything about the period or anything about the composer or anything about the rest of it. It's just there. It's granted.
Spelled out so.
It's just spelled out.
Chopin. Now, I know you don't want to hear him on his own piano, probably.
If that would have been, of course, tremendously fascinating.
To have heard him play those etudes.
Not so much the etudes. I think Liszt would have played them as well or better.
Yeah.
The mazurkas is what I would.
Mazurkas.
And some of the sugary nocturnes or the waltzes that we can't understand and find out what he would have done with them.
The elegance may have been so blinding you would have fainted.
It may have been so classical. That's what I often think. It would have
Really?
been really quite reserved and not terribly,
More
very-
reserved than we have
more
any
Mozartian than Rachmaninoff.
idea. Yes, I'm sure.
Rachmaninoff I heard, so of course that's never enough.
It was never enough hearing him.
Because he's still the only pianist where if he plays Liebesfreude, the recording, I hear the recording, I literally go down on the floor and say, will somebody kill me now? I don't want to play the piano again, ever. And that's the only pianist I feel that way about.
You're not the only one.
Including Mr. Horowitz. I mean, I adore Horowitz, and I'm dazzled, but I do not feel like suicide with Horowitz. But with Rachmaninoff, I really feel there is no point in anybody else even trying to play.
This may have been all overall the finest
Because
sensibility.
the sound is so smooth, as well as the technique. All those little notes just go. It isn't clackety-clackety. It's just incredible roar.
Then that
But
cool,
nobody else.
that cool passion. When I was very young, I said, "What's the big deal about Rachmaninoff?" And then each year, it became more apparent.
And the taste, just those. But both he and Chrysler had that thing which nobody has anymore. That charm. There's no other word quite for it. A kind of cornball elegance to do those outrageous harmonies for the Chrysler things, or even for the Bach suite that he transcribed.
Again, we're in a different age.
Where
aren't
it
we?
would take, nobody today would have the guts to do that. It's a certain kind of humanity, a certain kind of, but the charm. I think in the classic sense of the word.
And yet, why
that
not
makes
the
you
guts?
suddenly a tear come very quickly to your eye, and you don't know why. It can be done in one chord.
Okay, we have a major problem here. Why doesn't anyone have the guts? Here, you're so affected by it. You yourself could possibly recreate this kind of mood.
I don't know what it is.
Yet you wouldn't.
Maybe we use too many deodorants.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost some humanity in cleaning up certain things. I don't know.
Godofsky and Hoffman were once at a party, and the lady said, How do you two play the piano so wonderfully? Your hands are so small." And Godofsky, in his usual manner, said, "Madam, whoever told you that one plays the piano with their hands? But I will
Good
come
point.
back to something prosaic. Do you like your hand? Do you feel it's..."
I've never known any other hand.
That's a good answer.
It's almost about the same size as Mr. Horowitz's. It's not.
Looks like his.
I would have liked it to have been a little more stretch, just a hair, but I have good stretch and good stretch in between. It's been a very adequate hand. It is not a good hand for the third Rachmaninoff. It isn't quite. I need one more note.
So you do the Rhapsody.
I
more
don't
than
do the third.
Mhm.
But it's worked out very well for me. I agree with that statement. You don't play the piano with your hands. There's no such thing as a piano hand.
So there's no such thing as a piano hand. There may well be certain little things you would desire for certain pieces, but that could work. That could work against another piece.
Right.
Yeah.
What I have always found, though, however interesting, is in the overall build. Generally speaking, the thin, slender, wiry pianos are the most virtuosic,
Mm-hmm.
and also tend to generate a kind of electric excitement. The fatter the pianist, the less sound is generally produced, and I find that very strange. I have that particularly with students. You get these huge, fat students. I mean, men who are 6'4" and weigh a lot, and they get a tiny sound.
Isn't that interesting?
I don't know why that is.
Are you yourself fearful about your hands being hurt and things
No,
like that? You don't think
not
about it?
really. I think Margot Fontaine made the best remark to me when she said, the less we worry about legs or hands or feet, the better, because you can become accident prone. I grease them when they start to split. You know, I'm careful about that. Otherwise, just moderate care. You really cannot prevent a major thing if it's going to happen. If you're going to be in a plane crash and your back muscles are going to be cut and you're going to lose an arm, you can't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think just moderate, adequate care. You can become so concerned about those things that pretty soon you become a raving lunatic.
What if I arrested you, I became a dictator, and I said, John, you're to be in pianist's prison from now on, and you are never again to play the piano. How would you could walk around, you could read, but how would you survive that sentence?
Before my menopausal period, I probably would have said I would have killed myself. But now I think that I love music even more.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would say, I would find a way to cope with it.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Mm-hmm.
So you're quite an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. In the 19th century, a talent like yours would have been driven to composing as well as playing, without a doubt, because the age of interpreters only stemmed after a certain time. We live in an age of specialization. Is this bad? Have you had urges to compose?
None.
None.
I have done a little rearranging.
And certain transcriptions you've
I
done,
have
yeah.
no urge to compose. I do not have that talent. I do not have it at all.
But you would have had it, is what I'm trying to say.
Maybe.
Many people today compose but can't play the piano.
I might, much to their misfortune, because you can hear it in the music.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear these ivory tower composers who haven't a clue about what sounds good on the instrument.
You played on your Desto recording a stunning piece of music, the 24 Preludes by Richard Cumming.
Right.
And they're dedicated to you. Is this a good example of a fine work of communicative?
Well, Richard was also a pianist.
Yeah.
But I sat on that whole business and just, said, no, that isn't hard enough, or this is this. So it was very much of a collaboration.
How interesting. Yeah. What does the concept interpreter mean to you? For that's your primary function. You're a virtuoso with the technique of a virtuoso, and yet you cannot be doing some of those things Rachmaninoff did, as you called that cornball kind of. You are an interpreter, serious man out in the world playing a specific museum literature and a few pieces that are unknown. But basically,
well,
Henry Miller said it's a very important word, interpreter.
Number one, we can never know what the composer really thought. We do not understand the composer's ethic, no matter what's been written on it. I'll try to say this. I don't know how successful I will be. That I think that there is if you and I, for example, were both musicians, if we would talk about the last movement of 111,
Mm-hmm.
and say that I have never heard you play it and you have never heard me play it and we have never agreed. Each one of us has, I go back to the word morality, each one of us has, as we have religious moralities, we have a concept in our head. I don't know what your religion is, you don't know what mine is, but there is a concept at which we meet.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it might be a cathedral. For you, it might be a synagogue. Not necessarily. It might be something else. But that would be very stupid of me to try to figure out what Beethoven's exact thought was.
Mm-hmm.
But rather, the piece evokes a general morality, a general concept. And I will have something parallel. As long as we're more or less on the same height, that's all that counts.
Yes, I understand.
If I don't reach that height, but it is totally unimportant as to whether it is the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we must go through the composer's intention, his overall intention, not his specific intention.
Yeah.
What is he trying to put down that he can't put in words? What is he trying, more or less?
I get it.
Does that make any sense?
It's perfectly said. We have 2 more minutes. I'm going to ask you fast, make them very short. What are the differences in playing for oneself at home or being in a public situation on the stage of a big hall?
There shouldn't be any difference except the degree of tonal projection.
Tonal projection.
The size of the performance should be the same.
Well, how many students, though, ever get a chance
They
to
don't.
work
That's
like
the
that?
problem.
You see, there's
That's the problem. That's why I teach in the master classes in a large hall.
I see. Very interesting. Do you still practice scales or arpeggios?
You bet your sweet life I do. Double thirds, double sixths every day of my life.
To keep in shape or what?
Just to keep the mechanism
in
going
flow.
and to keep my fingers working.
Do you memorize in any certain way?
Depends on the work.
Depends on the work.
Certain works you can memorize a certain way. I have no way of knowing how I memorize. I just get to work at it, and it will tell me how to memorize.
Are you a good sight reader?
Excellent.
Is this a neglected part of training today?
Yes, definitely.
Really? How does one become a better sight reader in maturity?
Do it.
Even after 16?
Just do it. My mother made me sight read 2 and 3 hours a day from the time I was 6 or 7.
Yeah. Do you, you've recorded the Chopin Etudes. Did you ever hear Courteau's performance, which
No.
are not up to yours technically?
No, I've never heard Courteau's.
And yet he has something so
Special.
magical.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think we have a phenomenal amount of material.
I don't know whether I made that point clear of interpretation.
Say anything else you want to.
I really don't know quite how to put it. It's just, if I'm an American, I've had conversations with Soviets, for example, where I realized that we were both thinking the same depth of thought, but we had no idea what the contexts were.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that counts. That's what I'm saying. If that makes, does that, you understand what it is, so if you have to
Perfectly,
transcribe it, fine. Okay.
Just one little question, and that is, should the government participate more, as in the Soviet Union?
Only if they will keep their hands off.
Good.
And in this country, I don't trust them to do that.
You want that in? They may.
Oh, I don't care. I don't trust them to say, here's the money, now you, the qualified people, handle it.
Do you trust the Russians?
The British I would have trusted.
Uh-huh.
The Russians? Yes, the Russians. They have, the government has pretty much left that alone, except in the case of creative as opposed to
One
recreative.
important artist that plays the piano where Rao says there's no humor in music. That's quite a statement.
He's right.
And what do you mean right?
You mean in contemporary?
No, in music itself. There's no humor in Schumann or...
He doesn't think there is?
No.
He's wrong.
Uh-huh.